Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Xenex podcast. Um, I'm very pleased to have our guest who is an expert in data security, governance, and protection topic. Carver Farrow is an attorney who specializes in this very popular topic these days. And Carver, thank you very much for joining us today. I appreciate you spending some time to educate our audience about this very interesting topic. Maybe you could start by introducing yourself and talking about what you do on a everyday basis. Yeah, well, with that kind of a background, Carver, I think we could get a lot of this session. So maybe we could start by a topic that I think it's very interesting to ask this question because most business think data security is an IT problem. I see that all the time. But as an attorney, why do you see it as a legal problem first rather than IT problem? Wow. So about HIPAA, HIPAA gets mentioned all the time, right? And you just mentioned it yourself because it's such a low hanging fruit, I guess. Um, so what are these legal obligations that apply to businesses that are in healthcare, right? What are the most of them? Uh, what obligations exist? What do you recommend? How should companies address them? Wow, that's amazing because when we talk about this, it just reminded me of this customer that we're dealing with, that they even had a um, website that was not HIPAA compliant, and somebody discovered it and they got into trouble. So even we talked about information about the customer's patients that might be, if they're breached, then that's an issue. But also, not just that, but you also get calls that I get like, hey, we've got a problem. Our problem is that, they've discovered that our website is not, HIPAA compliant. And as a result of that, we've got data privacy issues. And then it goes into a downward spiral of issues and issues and issues. So yeah, I get that. So having said that, that example that you brought up and my example, uh, walk us through actually what happens legally. The moment a company discovers it had a breach, like when does the clock start ticking? What are the consequences? What what should one do to protect themselves, knowing the steps along the way? Yeah. Yeah, cover. I just meant, before the call I mentioned to you, I just came back from net diligence conference in San Diego, and there was a lot of talk. Yeah, there was a lot of talk about, if there is an incident, call your contacts immediately. Don't delay it, because there's a lot of things that could happen. For the protection of you and the ones in the audience who are listening to podcast, your protection is the main topic of this conversation. So you need to protect yourself, which means we got to bring in the right resources immediately to address the issues of compliance, to address the issue of breach, to address the issue of insurance. Sometimes the insurance companies have the resources that are extremely helpful in addressing any breach that you may have. So this is why we are having this conversation and this podcast, so that we can inform you. You've got to take action immediately. So, Carver, another topic which is on everybody's mind is AI, right? AI is everywhere. Employees are using Chat GPT, Claude, and the like. And most people are used to doing it without even thinking, right? You just go and type in something in Chat GPT or Claude, or your AI tool of the day, and without thinking about the legal exposure of this thing. So, as business owners, the people who are looking at, listening to this podcast, and they're thinking, okay, what do I do with my employees? What do I do with them using some of these AI tools. What are your recommendation as an expert in the legal field about this topic? Yeah. Such an important lesson learned. That means, we all have to look at our policies and reiterate with our employees, how to intelligently use AI. I get that. So, um, if a company gets hit with a breach and their contracts are silent on data security, then what happens? Yep. Yep. And this is really where Xenex shines because, as we've discussed, you and I, Xenex is a security operations center as a service, and we look at the overall enterprise cybersecurity. We see who's doing what, where they're doing it, how they got in, and because we have different tools that deploy, the view and our AI actually behind the scenes combines all of these telemetry that we ingest into our environment allows us to have a much better view of the enterprise or organization as a whole. So if somebody's coming in from HVAC system that are not supposed to, and there's suspicious behavior coming across the network, or even from externally coming in, but that user should not be there, we detect it. So having said that, what are your thoughts on security operations center role in protecting customers and avoiding these kind of breaches? Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned small business, and I categorize that small and medium sized business. And I'm wondering if a lot of the maybe we've got some people who are listening to this podcast, and they're saying, "Well, we're too small to be a target. It's not going to happen to me." I hear that all the time, by the way. If How does that assumption translate into a legal risk and financial risk? Yeah. Yeah, as a matter of fact, Gartner, and for those of you in listening to the podcast who don't know, Gartner is the gorilla industry analyst in information technology, covering all aspects of information technology, and they said 80% of small and business, small and medium-sized businesses are not officially protected. This is one topic about that: data privacy, data protection, and what Carver is saying. I would highly recommend you take it to the heart. Know how you're protected. get some consulting or a trusted resource to come in and take a look at it. There's tools that we use to look at the setup. We follow NIST, National Institute of Standards, as well as other frameworks to make sure that our customers are protected. We've got resources like Carver, who is an expert in the field, and that's why he's on this podcast. So there are resources available to you. Reach out to whomever that you trust, and figure out what you need to do to have better protection, and both on the cybersecurity side as well as data privacy side. So, Carver, what's the difference between a company that survives a data breach legally intact and the one that gets destroyed by it? How much of that comes down to what they did before the breach happened? Yeah, 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 yeah. So to that extent, actually, it's a very interesting topic to talk about, and a question to be answered, because uh, our role as a security operations center is that we have a log management. We log everything for our customers, and it's tamper proof in the cloud, so that if the customer has done all the right things, everything is available. The auditors can come in and take a look at the logs and do the research, so it protects the customer that says, yeah, we've done everything that we were supposed to, not only for cyber insurance purposes, but also for compliance. They come in and say, what happened? You say, well, I did have email security. I did have EDR. I did have backup and disaster recovery. I was doing my patch management regularly, and so on and so forth. We've done all these things, but you know, uh, breaches happen. People get in, and the bad guys get smarter, and they're using AI to get in. But if you've done all these pieces, and it's managing, and all of the information is logged permanently in the cloud, there is proof that the customer has done everything, and therefore avoid significant lawsuits, and even get everything covered by cyber insurance, both in terms of recovery as well as any claims. So that's a very important uh, consequence, and that is a very important step to take in order to protect yourself as a company. And it really plays into what Carl was saying. Be prepared. In fact, we could do tabletops that includes the topic of data privacy. We can even bring Carver. In fact, Carver, that gets me to my next question: is when should a business owner be calling on you, on their attorney, and what signs they've already, and what are the signs that they've already, they're too late. Carver, one of my favorite questions in all the podcasts is what to do. And in this, from this perspective, if you could give our audience one concrete thing to do this week to reduce their legal exposure and risk around data security, what would it be? Wow. Wow. You know, Carver, I think we've reached the end of our time for the podcast, and honestly, I could keep going for another 30 minutes. But I want to conclude by saying that between the service as an attorney for data privacy, so particularly somebody with expertise such as Carver, who's been doing this for a long time and focuses on small and medium-sized businesses, together with our expertise as a security operations center as a service, bringing it together, it will be not only cost savings, but it's also protection for the long term. You you will avoid all the downfalls of all the cases that we hear all the time. You will you will have, you could sleep better at night knowing you're protected. You will have all the evidence that's in the cloud for you, and you will have all the support to prepare you in advance so that if, God forbid something happens, you're secure and you're doing well. So please keep in mind, if there is a need, call us, call me, call Carver. We're here. The entire the ecosystem that we put together to protect our customers, we're there for you. And with that, I want to thank you, Carver, for being here today. I really appreciate all your insights, and well, hopefully we'll have you later on in 6 months for an update on this great topic. Absolutely. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye bye.